love local economy, let's have an economy that has a human scale, that has the rule, if you will, of proportionality among people, their institutions, their families, their relationships, and as few relationships with the modern state, with the modern corporation as possible. I made a discovery this morning on a checkbook. I am a man sometimes operating in commerce who uses checks. If you look at the line that you sign on your checkbook, you'll look at the line closely and you'll see that it's not just a line of green or blue darker than the background of the check. It is a line of micro printing. And the word that it said, I think I could make it out, not able to find a magnifying glass in my desk drawer this morning, is authorized signatory or authorized signature, something of that one of those two. Well, how does that work? If there's David Tulis who holds a checking account, and then there's David Tulis who writes his name on the check, how is it that these are, one is the authorized signature for whom? For whom is that signature authorizing this transaction to take place? A check, of course, is a financial instrument. It is a directive to pay, that the bank or the credit union pay the person who presents that check for redemption. So if I'm David Tulis, how is there another David Tulis who is the authorized agent or the authorized signatory? Is it not one person involved here? Well, no, it's not. There are two people. There's David Tulis, the one who signs, and then there's the David Tulis who is the account holder, and that is a separate body. That is, in fact, I would like to suggest the avatar that does business. The avatar being the handle which allows the state to deal with David Tulis and corporations, insurance companies, and financial institutions and others. So there's a need to have a separate person. The scale of modern economy, of national economy, is so vast and so impersonal that I can't effectively operate in it as a person, okay, as a human being, a flesh and blood individual. I have to have an agent which goes out and does things for me, and that agent is David Tulis. and of course, that is it's all capital letters, and I don't write my name like that. That's not me. But every time I write a check, I accept that, or I pretend, or I offer that I am the authorized signatory for that person, that party, separate from me. Well, there is in our modern economy and national economy the ability to be in many places at once, to be more than one person, to be acting not just in a personal capacity as a man, as a human being, a soul with a body, as C.S. Lewis likes to say, an enfleshment of an image of God. Right? Every human being is made in God's image. I'm not just that. I am this being. I bring this up because it connects with the Ooltewah rape story and the charges being filed by way of a summons from the district attorney Neil Pinkston to 3 school officials who are supposed to report next Thursday before juvenile judge Rob Filial and explain how it is that they did not violate the state statute, which requires notification of several various parties when there is a suspicion of child abuse, which of course we had evidence of in an outing in Sevier County among four young men. One, the victim, the youngest of the 4, the 3 others, the perpetrators who rammed a pool cue into the anus of the younger boy, who apparently was out of favor. He was not in favor with them, and they were going to set things right and teach that young man a lesson, and engaged in a homosexual act that had lacked lubrication, and therefore damaged this young man's internal organs, requiring 8 days of hospitalization and an angry constituency. The angry constituency primarily are the parents in public schools, the state factory school system, who are the patrons who get it all for free. And they are indignant that such things could happen. And as we are learning, the rules prohibiting such abuse are not according to the details of the statute, the Tennessee Code Annotated, which declares what rules should say. And the top page of the newspaper yesterday was that that school hazing policy is not in compliance. Well, not that had they been in compliance, they would have prevented same from happening, right? Rules don't mean a lot to Americans, whether, well, they don't mean a lot to people who are in authority, and they often don't mean a lot to the general public. But the rules are not in order. And the story, a lengthy story by Kendi Anderson, a reporter for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press yesterday, went into detail about these policies that are supposed to be in place, adopted, sort of rewritten from the statute and adopted by the vote of the school fathers here in Hamilton County. And that apparently was only partly done. And now there's recrimination, bitterness that these rules are not in order, showing thereby lack of good faith, lack of care on the part of the school board, which I don't think that's a fair accusation, but it is being made. And of course, Dr. Rick Smith, the superintendent, has been hounded by a petition that demands his resignation over this scandal. Well, there's a scale problem here. The scale problem is the same one in the school system as it is with the micro printed line on your checkbook. Things are too big, and people have overextended themselves. We have overextended ourselves financially as a country with our $28 trillion national debt, the governmental, the legal debt obligation on its bonds. Unpayable, and the national government with its obligations probably passing $200 trillion. If all the obligations were to be offered for redemption, whether it's treaty guarantees, loan guarantees to national governments in Africa and in the Middle East and whatnot, and promises to pay for bridges and all such things that the federal government absorbs in its goodwill, right? Passing $200 trillion, clearly unpayable, clearly untenable. But we're Americans. We are confident that we can take on anything. We just have to let Congress function properly. We have to end the deadlock and so on, and all will be better. Everyone's confidence will be restored. Well, this is David Tulis, and the scale problem is one that really gets to me and makes me think how difficult any kind of change will be, and the change in the way of improvements, right? The way of a restoration of human scale. You might say a restoration of even Christian virtue won't be coming from people on stages all wearing suits and white collared shirts and standing very stiffly erect and looking smart there on the television cameras in rows, right? Rows of men standing, talking about how they are the true bearers of conservatism and so on. That is not the solution to the problem that we face. The problem is really insoluble. It can't be solved. And if that is true, then my hope is that we can think, you, my listener, and I can think through some of these problems together here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio and make proper steps. I think if we make some small steps in the right direction toward liquidity, toward divesting from national and investing local, that we're going to be reducing the damage to ourselves. If you want to measure it in terms of dollars, that might be an easy way of summarizing the argument. In the end, your virtue, your capitalization, or your decapitalization, right? Your losses, your debts, they are measurable in terms of dollars. And I'd say cultures and nations and peoples who are, let's say, under God's judgment, right? You can measure the judgment in the ledger books. If you look at the ledger books, you should be able to see how there are judgments, repeated judgments, and usually judgments which God ordains, of course, to every empire, all of which have gone now. They're all gone. Here we are in the current the empire of the day. We have a judgment too, and you can see that in the numbers, right? In the ledgers, the debt ledgers, the obligation ledgers, the asset column versus the debit column, and there are myriad debits, and we're seeing that. And one way of getting to it, I think, in a kind of innocuous and harmless way of describing this problem, is this scale problem. And we have okay. So what are the facts? Just briefly, we're here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and our county government runs a school system serving 43,000 children, and it's supposed to have a rule that defines and describes hazing and sexual abuse and sexual harassment. And apparently the rules that were adopted are not amply mimicking the statute, which requires that to be had. There's a Tennessee Department of Education spokeswoman speaking in yesterday's editions to the Chattanooga Times Press, said it is up to local school boards in conjunction with their attorneys to draft and adopt bullying and harassment policies. Okay. If a violation of the law is brought to the department's attention, we work with the district to immediately correct, she says to the reporter, Kendi Anderson, in an email. She did not respond to questions asking if the state will work to ensure Hamilton County's policy comes into compliance with state law. Well, the state doesn't have to do that. You just read the statute and write what you have to write according to the statute. That's pretty simple. You don't have to then ask the state, is this okay? That's a pointless legal step. If you have a competent person who reads, who's also a member of the bar, you can figure out yourself if it's adequate. Todd Gardenhire, the Republican, he said there needs to be some consequence in the law for board members not following the state law, and there needs to be some consequences in their own policy about what to do with a board attorney who does not advise them to be in compliance with all the laws. Again, Todd Gardenhire, the capitalist investment advisor, advising us that, well, there are laws, and in fact, we need to have another law that makes school board members somehow punishable if they represent the state's interest in their school corporation in a county, and they don't have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Again, there's this confidence, confidence in paper. There's a kind of a confidence in, if we just have the right form, we can prevent evil from happening. We can prevent malice from taking place among school children. And if it happens, well, we can point to the rule. We can say, well, the rule was very clear that you can't harass someone by shoving a pool cue up his anus, and you can't have an abusive environment where people are harassed and threatened physically and threatened morally and in their persons by loudmouth, boisterous boys who don't know when to stop. Right? That's not allowed. There's a confidence in paper, which I think is maybe a false confidence. And how do these, you got these I'm mentioning several things here, and maybe it's hard to piece together, and maybe I can't put all the parts together neatly, but the scale problem says that when things get too big, they don't work. When the scale is wrong, people can't be happy, right? There's a bar to their happiness. Everywhere nature works, true to scale, and everything has its proper size accordingly. This is from a writer, Darcy Thompson, writing in 1915. Men and trees, birds and fishes, stars and star systems have their appropriate dimensions and their more or less narrow range of absolute magnitudes. So things have an absolute range of the ideal size. In other words, if some things get too big, they are simply too big. And how do you know when they're too big? And Leopold Kohr, in a great book of which I've read just a small fragment, Leopold Kohr, The Breakdown of Nations, 1957, says, on a small scale, everything becomes flexible, healthy, manageable, and delightful, even a baby's ferocious bite. On a large scale, on the other hand, everything becomes unstable and assumes the proportions of terror. And that is what happens when you have a state that's too big, when you have a police department that's too big, when you have a War Department, or no, I guess they're calling out defense departments. If you have a War Department that's too big, you have a heavy hand of terror. The stories in the press tell us that 9 a.m. Thursday next week there will be an appearance before Rob Filliard, juvenile court judge, and three officials are being suspended without pay during that time. The story that I'm looking at here at Chattanooga.com tells about the details. Neil Pinkston refers to assaultive behavior in a statement in which he tells about the summonses filed upon three, including Allard Neadley, the basketball coach Andre Montgomery, and the assistant basketball coach Carl Williams. They're said to have violated the mandatory reporting law. He says, Pinkston says, in addition, we are investigating allegations of an ingrained culture of violence among the football and basketball teams at OHS, Ooltewah High School, reaching back several years. As we interview potential victims who are former OHS players, if the evidence is sufficient to meet the state's legal burden of proof, charges will be filed in those incidents as well. I know a writer in North Georgia, Tammy Drennan, whose work sometimes appears in a newsletter for home education, of which I'm the editor. And she says that the culture in schools is highly sexualized. There is a continual rhythm of sexual suggestion, sexual carelessness between boys and girls. That girls are constantly bombarded with suggestions, and we can suspect, or you can expect, that much of that comes from the pornographic culture that is in which we are awash. We are awash in pornography, and there's a great deal of objectivization of women by boys who are, even young boys, are watching porn on their smartphones and on their handheld, right, their handheld devices. No, I'm talking about computers, and so there is a great deal of abuse of all kinds in the mass system, in the factory school. It is not surprising. And why though are parents so angry? There's another story that talks about, this one is at also at the Chattanooga.com, that has numerous photographs of people standing at a podium. Why are people so angry? One woman, Tanya McBriar, tells about her son who was slapped around on a bus at 13 years old at the time, and she says, "You failed my child. I cannot believe that you can stand here and tell all these parents to stand up to bullying." Well, she's angry because she can't help but be a bit angry, but her own decisions about her educational choices brought her to this point. And people are frustrated and angry because the system is too large. Think what would happen if the school system at issue had 45 students. And there's a director, there's a superintendent, there's a board of parents who are responsible. Think how everything would be different. If you had a system, individual school systems that were satellite, all satellite schools are all, not if not satellites, they're all their own stars, right? They're all their own little stars of maybe 100 families at most. You've got your Muslim school, you've got your environmental school. This is something of the charter school theory here, but it's in the private sector. Think if this were in the private sector, there would be immediate and personal responsibility. Yes, if there was a rape or an abuse, someone would be personally assessed of it. Maybe there would be criminal charges filed. But there's personal accountability because we have a system that is administrative and bureaucratic. It is a system that is a part of an abstract corporation. No one really is personally responsible, and no one has the sense that there is anyone that can be held to account. And that's why there's this extraordinary anger, this extraordinary sense of betrayal. There would be, even if it were in a small school or an individual school setting, that would still be there. But because the system has no human scale, it is a gigantic combine. People feel helpless and hopeless, and they're angry, and that's why the petition for demanding the resignation of Superintendent Smith is has still some steam in it. Right? These efforts, though, they're like slapping against the sides of a battleship with a whip. Right? You can whip all you want, but in the end, the ship is there at the dock, and it's insensate to the fact that you were angry, that you've slapped it around and tried to peel off a little bit of the paint on the flank of that vessel. It's not responsive. It really can't be. It's not intended to be responsive. It's intended to be. School systems are intended to be responsive, not to the parents. No, they are intended to be responsive to the state and those who sort of run the state in the background. That would be a whole bevy of nonprofit organizations, of computer technology corporations, agencies and entities funded by Bill Gates and other well-intentioned benefactors who run the national economy, and some of whom are players in the deep state and have a great stake in the deep state and its continuing prosperity on the backs of the people like you. You think that the people in Washington and the people who want to be in Washington at the head of the executive branch, those GOP candidates, you think that the people in Washington are there for you, right? All those candidates say they're going up there for you, but you've got it backwards. You, my listener, here in local economy, Hamilton County and Chattanooga, you have it backwards. They're not there for you, but you are here for them. And they have great causes, great purposes. And the Republican Party, if it wins, or the Democratic Party, if it wins, will be there to make sure that you know that is a lesson that you need to have. And that's the lesson you need to walk away with. If that's true, then what are we to do here? Is there any way of thinking positively about tomorrow, about the future? Are we stuck? Are we stuck simply praying for the best candidate? If that's where your hope is, you, my listener, are possibly being misled by the media, being misled by your own hopes and desires for tranquility, for a reason, right? You'd like there to be a reason for things, and you'd like there to be a prospect for hope and maybe a turnaround. Well, I'm not that confident.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
After this cold and frosty start, expect lots of sunshine and great-looking weather for today. Highs in some areas back into the upper 50s. Tonight, some clouds, not as cold, lows upper 30s. Mostly cloudy, some late showers Friday. Highs 50 to 52 with dry and cooler weather for Saturday. Tonight at 10, 9 Central on USA Network is the premiere of the new original series Colony from Carlton Cuse, executive producer of Lost. L.A. is under siege and everyone must choose a side. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business and becoming self-sufficient. Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. 875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Call me now, 875-5621.
While politicians debate climate change and taking our guns, they leave America vulnerable to disaster. You need to act now to keep your family safe and prepared. Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have long-term storage food? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? If not, what are you waiting for? Call P5 Preparedness right now, 423-602-2175. Do you honestly think the government is going to help you? If you do, you are wrong, dead wrong. Don't get caught unprepared. Let the experts at P5 Preparedness get you ready for any emergency or disaster situation. Today, we offer a wide range of classes for the beginner on how to prepare, as well as the expert prepper. We stock a wide range of supplies, including long-term storage food, water filtration, outdoor gear, tactical gear, and plate carriers. P5 Preparedness, East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel Road. You will see the Army Deuce and a Half truck, 423-602-2175, 1309 Panorama Drive, Chattanooga, P5preparedness.com.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. In the search for two Marine choppers which collided off a Hawaiian island, the Coast Guard now saying it has spotted a debris field.
The collision happened off Oahu's North Shore late last night. We don't know if anyone's heard of what may have caused that crash. The surf in that area is expected to be 30 to 40 feet high today with large swells rolling in.
Fox Radio's Tanya J. Powers. The Coast Guard says that each transport helicopter had 6 people on board. In last night's GOP debate, frontrunners Donald Trump and Ted Cruz going head-to-head.
The Trump-Cruz battle on display could set the tone for the final run-up to the contest in Iowa, New Hampshire, and in South Carolina all next month.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. And they say they hit the Powerball jackpot, a Tennessee couple appearing on NBC's Today Show to show a ticket they say is worth 1/3 of the $1.6 billion jackpot. Fox News, we report. You decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. In the Ooltewah High School rape case, 3 adults have now been charged with failure to report child abuse. County School Superintendent Rick Smith said on Thursday that the 3 are suspended without pay pending the completion of the investigation. They are the head coach Andre Montgomery, assistant coach Carl Williams, and the athletic director Jesse Nyadli. Hamilton County Juvenile Court documents also suggest that there may be 4 victims, not just the one. 4 freshman basketball players were reportedly subjected to apparent sexual assault and being struck with a pool cue. One player required emergency surgery after the injuries he received while at a rental cabin. Hypothermia has been listed as a cause of death for a 13-month-old child who was left in a car for 5 hours by the grandmother. An investigation is still underway. The identity of the Powerball jackpot winner is still not known, but the location where the Powerball ticket was bought is known, and the owner has received $25,000. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
After this cold and frosty start, expect lots of sunshine and great looking weather for today. Highs in some areas back into the upper 50s. Tonight, some clouds, not as cold, lows upper 30s. Mostly cloudy, some late showers Friday. Highs 50 to 52 with dry and cooler weather for Saturday. Tonight at 10, 9 Central on USA Network is the premiere of the new original series Colony from Carlton Cuse, executive producer of Lost. LA is under siege and everyone must choose a side. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Chuck Fleischman of Chattanooga and Scott Desjardins of the district to the west of Chattanooga both voted to defund Planned Parenthood and its empire by redirecting dollars, federal dollars, borrowed and taxed alike, into more ethical health providers, according to Tennessee Right to Life. The notice from Tennessee Right to Life says that Planned Parenthood affiliates performed 327,166 baby killings in the 2013 to 14 fiscal year. That is more than 30% of the estimated 1.058 million baby destroying operations annually in the United States. This number equates to an unborn baby being killed every 96 seconds inside a Planned Parenthood facility. And of course, the parts of the baby are sold for the for various industries that use baby organs for their ingredients in medications and cosmetics and the like. The revenues of this wonderful organization exceeded $1.3 billion, and 41% of that came from the good people in the form of government health services, grants, and reimbursements. LifeSiteNews.com has a story about how bureaucrats measure the world and how they see the world. And they look at numbers and they look at studies, and they are concerned about having numbers edging in the wrong direction. In Canada, there's a study out of Quebec that discusses babies who are born, and it was intended that they be slaughtered, but accidentally they were born, and then of course they're allowed to expire. And the number is 216 children got that treatment between 2000 and 2012. The authors complained that the death of abortion survivors has a non-negligible upward impact on the Quebec's infant mortality rate. In other words, the infant mortality rate goes up when these babies are born in a botched baby killing surgery, and then of course are allowed to die. That it's negligible, but it says non-negligible. So in other words, it's noticeable, and we have to do something about that. If we could just figure out what to do. The authors are more concerned that these intentional deaths are inflating the province's infant mortality rate than they are, according to this essay, about at the thought of any discomfort the babies feel as they are allowed to die. The authors, let's see, is Quebec and Canada overall, the induction method poisoning is used for late-term abortions, and there is a significant failure rate, the story says. Failure rate, of course, is that the babies survive. So if you have a failure rate in abortion, that is a blight on your record, right? That's a blight on your statistics that your Ministry of Health and Public Welfare has to account for. And there may be a memo in the annual review of the director, who's going to be chided gently about these figures and will be advised to obtain counsel and perhaps write a policy directive that will prevent that overage from happening. Make sure if you're going to go armed that you take your handgun permit class from Carter Shooting Supply. That's the Tennessee handgun permit class at Carter Shooting Supply and Range on Highway 58. Great prices on firearms, pistols, shotguns, and rifles. I don't think any bazookas are available right now, but well, maybe things will change and you can buy one there. Also, if you have any kind of question about your cooling and heating unit, make sure that you contact Superior Air Systems in the big orange vans. The big orange vans all around town, Superior Air Systems. Notice those vans and say to yourself, I need to have some maintenance on my unit. I didn't do the change of season check and I'm running it hot, but I need to have someone check it. Make sure that Superior is the outlet that you call. That Superior Air Systems in the big orange vans, 886-6602. That's 886-6602. My name is David Tulis. We're here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and we are on YouTube. You can see whether I passed today the bow tie inspection that you, my listener, well, I know you don't care, but your wife, when she peeks over your shoulder, she's going to say, how's David doing today? And she'll gauge my whole show based on whether my tie is a good match or not and whether I tied it correctly. And that's at YouTube, the Hot News Talk Radio channel. And we cover local economy and the free markets here every morning. Make sure that you have a friend who is willing to jump ship from other broadcasters, as Sean Hannity did. Sean Hannity jumped here to our station, Hot News Talk Radio, AM. That's right, AM 1240. And Colin Cowherd, the sports giant, here on our station. We also have the tech observer, the tech guru here in Chattanooga. That's Russell, our news director, at 11 o'clock. We also have our Patriot Prepper show every Thursday here from Duke Nukem. Duke Nukem is the perfect man to give you the insight on preparations for difficult times ahead, parlous times, as they would say in the 19th century, in the gray news columns of editorial fodder back in those days. Parlous time, difficult times ahead, and that's the P5 preparedness. That's P5 preparedness on East Brainerd Road. They're just behind the big deuce and a half army truck. That's P5 preparedness. Stop in and ask what you need to be thinking about. Okay, don't buy anything at the first visit. Say, what do I need to start thinking about? And they've got books there. The staff there have books, and you will be well treated and get things at good prices. And I think knowledge and advice is what you'll get from Seth and from Duke. Duke Kumbelich is his real name. Duke Nukem, we call him. And very helpful to you. My night story of late has been a book my daughter Abigail despises. It's called A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. And we're having a hoot reading it aloud. If the reading comes too late, sometimes I just skip it. But that's terrible. I should never let my son go to bed or let me go to bed ahead of him without reading him his story. That's how it is. Since I get up so early, my son, who's 13, says, "Dad, it's bedtime." And sometimes when he says that, I'm just so tired at the end of the day that I just say, I'm good night, son. Good night, Jeanette. I'm going to bed, and I don't read him. So that is a sin, not before God perhaps, but it is a kind of a sin of promise. I'm not keeping my promise to read every day this book and others. Well, there's a story about the Yankee Connecticut man in King Arthur's Court, and we came across a couple days ago a prisoner, Sir Madoc, and here is what happened to him. And I want you to hear this because it brings up a point we mentioned today at Panera Posse. Panera Posse is the group that meets at the Panera Bread store every Friday morning, early for coffee and bagels, and we round up the bad guys and put the money back in the bank. And we talked about this very question today about this kind of a stupor. We are in a stupor, and it's something like the people who surround a prisoner of Sir Madoc who comes out after 50 years. He was basking. He comes out in the middle of the afternoon. He came upon one of those very patriarchs ourselves at the edge of a poor village. He was basking in the love of relatives and friends whom he had not seen in 50 years. He'd been a prisoner, okay? And about him and caressing him were also descendants of his own body whom he had never seen at all till now. But to him, these were all strangers. His memory was gone. His mind was stagnant, right? He'd been in prison. It seemed incredible that a man who could outlast half a century shut up in a dark hole like a rat. But here were his old wife and some old comrades to testify to it. They could remember him as he was in the freshness and strength of his young manhood when he kissed his child and delivered it to its mother's home birth, right? And went away into that long oblivion. The people at the castle could not tell within half a generation the length of time the man had been shut up there for his unrecorded and forgotten offense. But his old wife knew, and so did her old child, who stood there among her married sons and daughters, trying to realize a father who had been to her a name, a thought, a formless image, a tradition all her life. And now was suddenly concreted into actual flesh and blood and set before her face. It was a curious situation, yet it did not, on that account that I have made room for it here, but on account of a thing which seemed to me still more curious, to wit, that this dreadful matter brought from these downtrodden people, right? This is this American lands in medieval times, right? And that's the storyline. So here is this ingenious Yankee among these oppressed people. They had been heritors and subjects of cruelty and outrage so long that nothing could have startled them but a kindness. In other words, people were so used to abuse, so used to harassment, so used to being stopped, right? So used to being taxed that nothing startles them except a kindness, he says. This is Mark Twain, right? This is supposed to be funny, okay? Just ease up a little bit. Yes, here was a curious revelation indeed of the very depth to which this people had been sunk in slavery. Their entire being was reduced to a monotonous, dead level of patience, resignation, dumb, uncomplaining acceptance of whatever might befall them in this life. Their very imagination was dead. Their very imagination, he says, Mark Twain says, was dead. When you can say that of a man, he has struck bottom, I reckon. There is no lower deep from him. And in a way, I think we have that very problem today. And we see it when I think about going to a school board meeting, okay? I'm sorry, but when I go to meetings like that and gatherings where there are a lot of people who are all dependent, right? They're not customers, right? They're clients. There's a difference between a customer and a client. And if you care about local economy and the free markets as I do, that'll be something important to you. A customer is someone who buys from you of his own free will, right? A client is a dependent. A client is a dependent. And we are all clients. All Americans seem to be clients. We're not customers who willingly buy or don't buy, right? We are people who who are dependent. We are not free. We are dependent. And we have that sort of dumb resignation that Mark Twain talks about of the people of the Middle Ages and the medieval period, which I think he misrepresents it in many ways, because back then, especially after the collapse of Rome, if you look in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries, people were really much more free. Politically, there were no empires, right? There were every fiefdom, every lord was his own country. Cities eventually grew with the trading classes and the merchants. They grew in prosperity and defied kings. They grew to defy kings in the High Middle Ages. Definitely something that happened between 10,000 and 13,000. There were the rise of the merchant class and ingenuity, and the idea of the marketplace grew. And we are, sad to say, in many ways, dependents. How do we not be dependents like that? How do we not be clients anymore? People who are led about, well, one way I think is the marketplace. One way I think is entrepreneurship. If you can be an employer, you are making a big step as opposed to being an employee. But before you can be an employer, you have to be a man with a service, a man who wants to help other people. And that means starting a business. You, my listener, please think about starting a business now. And if you don't have ideas for your own business like I have for mine, right? My radio station here, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, in many ways reflects my interest, right? I try to make it as personally about how I see things as possible so that you can benefit from having this tangential 5-minute conversation with me every day. And maybe I can benefit you with some insight that might not have come to you otherwise. But if you don't have a business for your own, an idea for your own business that looks like you, buy into somebody else's business that looks like them, right? These are Americans that are selling you these franchises, and they are really the best. Americans are, if they're going to be remembered, it is for their marketing and sales genius, their innovation. We are unsurpassed, unexcelled in that area, though no doubt we will pass as a nation and as a people. I think if we stand out in the history books, it'll be for innovation and industrial and creation, the creation of things and the creation of things that make their own markets. That is what we are known for. Now, if you want to have a franchise, just quickly now, let me tell you, contact Bruce Krebs. Call Bruce Krebs now. Call Bruce Krebs today. Bruce Krebs, his number at Entrepreneur Source is 875, write it down, 875-561, 875-561. He will get you into a franchise. Your plan B is needed because our system is very, very unstable. The national economy is saddled with debt. It is unworkable. All the dependents are in it. It is a crony capitalism at its highest level. It is highly financialized. A quarter of the economy produces absolutely no value whatsoever. It's totally financialized. Cruz's wife, the big CFR, the CFR gal, the bank gal, she is part of that world, right? They're conservatives, right? They're conservatives, but they are a part of the financial elites who make billions and billions doing nothing. They do absolutely nothing. They produce no product. They mine no ore. They create nothing on an assembly line. They are simply managers of arrangements and promises and contracts and insurance policies, cross-insurance policies, annuities, and the like. They are part of the world of insurance and produce nothing. So we have disaster ahead. Now, just again, if you have a business and you are wanting some help getting going, make sure, another reference here, that you contact Eric Pelton. Eric Pelton, the accountant at EJ Pelton Company. Online, it's ejpelton.com. Know about Form 1045 that you need to be aware of. That's Form 1045. The number is 622-3156. That's 622-3156. EJ Pelton Company, the numbers guy. My name is David Tulis. And if it's going on in Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio, where you report, and the world decides. You can call me if you want to get on the show. It's 800-8949. That's 800-8949. I don't give that number out, and I'm kind of ambivalent about it because I keep thinking that what I really want to do is get my work done. But my colleagues at the station, Russell, the news director, and our other characters here, they suggest that taking calls would be a good thing, and that would be good to interact with you. So, I'm happy to do that, and I think maybe we can we can do some good among ourselves if we do that. The scale problem, it comes up in this other part of the news today, and that is the need to have an anonymous tip line. Why do you need anonymous tip lines? Only when everybody is impersonally connected with everybody else. Only in an institution do you need an anonymous tip line. And apparently Hamilton County Schools failed in having one. It doesn't have one. There's no snitch line. Think of the abuse that comes with snitches and snitching and anonymous lines. Places where people anonymously on the Hamilton County School website can abuse somebody else. How is it that Gitmo is full of people? A lot of the people in Gitmo we think are terrorists. Well, probably most of them are innocent people who were sold by warlords in Kandahar province and other places in Afghanistan because they were on the outs. And so they were denounced and sold as terrorist suspects to the Americans. The Americans paid handsomely for these people. And now, 15 years after 9/11, they're still there. Innocent people who had some, they don't know anything. They're not necessarily malicious. Yes, they're Muslims, but they're not necessarily terrorists. And they're finally being let go. And they're innocent of any evil. And yet they've been renditioned by the Americans. And they're in Gitmo. Maybe one or two of them, of the 93 that are left there, have some connection with evil. Maybe some of them have held Kalashnikovs. Maybe some of them have gone through rifle training. Maybe one or two of them have actually fired an RPG in anger. Maybe they have. But are they terrorists? Well, who's to say? Who is to say? But we've got them, right? We've got them, and if they're there, they're terrorists, right? And so, we've got our home and square, not just in Chicago. We have it in Cuba as well, where people are innocently dragooned off the desert floor. Hang on, this is David Tulis and caller. You're on the air. You've got just a minute. What's on your mind?
I'll take it on your phone call. You're offered to make a phone call. Interesting because maybe Obama will trade a couple of those terrorists for another worthless American like he did. That was a traitor. So they just house them there, right? It's Hotel Guantanamo. Come on, they're enemy combatants. We didn't declare war, so it's really one of those situations where they have to keep these clowns somewhere. And I think waterboarding's too good for them. They use cow prods. They weren't sold over, David. We know who the enemy is. The CIA knows. We know who the enemy is. The enemy is Barack Obama, who's releasing them. He should put them back there and get the rest of them back there and cow prod them once a day to make them talk. Because they're not guaranteed rights under the Constitution. They're enemy combatants, and you treat them as such. Treat them the way they treat us. Torture them to get something out of them, and then shove pork down their throat.
Okay, well, shove pork down their throat and prod them every day with an electric cattle prod. A very gentle American who doesn't understand how we've gotten into our problem, creating enemies around the world. Enemies of the American empire. To them, we are all wicked. We're all evil. And I think our only national statesman, Ron Paul, is right. We need to withdraw. We need to get out of these countries. We need to stop occupying, stop making war on people. It's very un-local economy to do so.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
From all of us here at Hot News Talk Radio, thank you for patronizing our sponsors. It's important that you support people that support and advertise with Hot News Talk Radio, so we can continue to deliver the outstanding programs that you desire. And if you'd like to advertise on Hot News Talk Radio, you can email us at hotnewstalkradio@gmail.com. That's hotnewstalkradio@gmail.com. Or call 423-458-5563. That's 458-5563.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I love my Flex loan from Advance Financial. I needed cash, I needed it fast, and I didn't want to get a payday loan. My Flex loan from Advance Financial is not a payday